So welcome everyone to our webinar. We're going to talk about how to maximize your customers' lifetime value. My name is Leticia. I'll be the moderator for today's panel. I'm in the product marketing team here at Pipefy. We're super happy to have you here. I would also like to thank Stanley and Carla for joining. It should be a very interesting discussion. For everybody to know what to expect from this event. So we'll start with a very quick introduction on these digital drivers in customer support, so understanding a little bit more what are the big trends and challenges in customer support. Then we'll move on to the panel where Carla and Stanley will bring some real life examples. Like we'll go a little deeper into this discussion with some real examples from what they have been seeing implementing this digital transformation in their customers. We'll have some time for questions. In the end, I'll just give a very quick intro on what Pipefy is, and then we'll wrap it up, okay? So talking a little bit about trends and challenges and what we have been seeing with the customer support teams that we have been working with. There are mainly three big challenges that are usually common to all of those organizations. So one of the things that we have been seeing a lot is having those teams where you can't really be fast responding to customers. You have a very kind of like slow response velocity. You aren't really able to provide a predictable SLA to the customers, which leads to them feeling undervalued, feeling ignored, which leads to a very low customer satisfaction, which ultimately leads to churn. So that's a big problem. One other thing that we have been seeing is these companies not really having processes that enable them to be more efficient. So they have a lot of manual tools. Their systems are not that well integrated, which leads to inefficiency because the team needs to toggle between a lot of systems all of the time. They don't really have all of the customer information in a single place. So it's harder for them to be faster responding to this customer's inquiries as well. So that kind of like makes them not only more inefficient, but also drives costs up, right? Because you usually compensate that with more headcount. And third, we can't really improve what we can measure, right? So not having the right metrics in place and not keeping up with your processes and understanding where are your bottlenecks, where are you being efficient, where are you being inefficient, what's the service, what's the quality of the service that you're providing, is also something that makes these leaders unable to optimize the operation and optimize their processes. There's some really interesting research from McKinsey that shows that 77% of the customers say that they will be more loyal to businesses that offer top-notch service. So these customer support organizations that use technology are getting great results. So they're being able to reduce the cost per transaction up to 40%, and they're being able to boost conversion rates to 20%. And of course, when you have this digital customers experience, not only you're able to make your customers more satisfied, but you can also, that also leads to a better bottom line. So in a nutshell, when we're talking about transforming this customer support operations, transforming this customer support processes, that digitization effort ultimately leads to basically three things. So you can create a better experience for your customers, which drives customer satisfaction up. You can decrease your total time to resolution, and you drive customer retention as well because those customers are more satisfied, service is more efficient, and so on. And finally, when we're talking about this digital customer support strategies, there are basically four ingredients that compose those processes, those teams, those operations. So first, making sure that your customer is able to self-serve, right? So building portals and making sure that customers know where to go, what to do, and can also keep up, right, with their tickets and understand what's the status of each of those inquiries. Second thing is to provide one view and one technology for agents. So making sure that the people working on those tickets actually have the information that they need and that it's easily accessible for them so that they can be faster and be more efficient. Third is creating those processes in a way that they're collaborative across the company. So making sure that customer support teams are well connected with IT, are well connected with sales, are well connected with finance and so on. So building this collaboration across the organization is also key. And finally, using analytics to drive this growth, right? So understanding in a very scientific way what's working, what's not working, where are your bottlenecks, what needs to be optimized, and how. So going a little deeper into those kind of like broader trends and challenges, I would like to present to you our two panelists. So we have Carla from Capgemini, we have Stanley here from Typefy. I will ask you to introduce yourself. So Carla, please.
Thank you, Leticia. So, hi everyone, my name is Carla. I'm currently working in the Department for Technology Transformation in Capgemini, and as Leticia mentioned, I'm the business analyst lead for the Guatemala team. I've been working in Capgemini for over 5 years and have worked with 5P5 for 2 years now. We have been working with some implementations and helping customers to resolve issues and bring improvements as well.
Thank you so much for joining, Carla. Stanley?
Yeah, hi everyone. My name is Stanley Kwan. I head up customer success here for our North American accounts at Pipefy. I've worked with a lot of companies from enterprise size down to mid-market, and within that have worked with many customer support teams, customer service teams to help streamline and optimize their processes. And my background is kind of in implementation, project management, consulting, kind of all over the board, but mainly focused on enabling customers and organizations to use technology effectively.
Awesome. Thank you, Stanley, for your time and for sharing your expertise as well. So going a little deeper into these topics that we were just discussing, first question that I would like to ask, and I guess, Carla, it would be nice hearing from you, is like, what are the biggest challenges that you are seeing in customer support teams? So you work with a lot of customer support teams there at Capgemini, and I was wondering, like, what are the common challenges that you can see, not only in terms of processes, but the common challenges that they face in the kind of like a broader sense?
Sure, and I think you already mentioned some of them, but what I've seen in the process implementation that we have done is that they don't have visibility to control and also to analyze the process and see where they can improve the process. They don't have standardization in regards of, for example, the responses to the clients. They don't have any standardization. They don't have automation on the process. And I think that creates a lot of issues in their process. They also, another challenge that I've seen is that they have a lot of escalations because they don't have they don't have responses to the clients, and they perform a lot of manual tasks. So we have seen that they don't have automations in regards of the process or the task that they do. So that's something that definitely Pipefy has helped them to improve on the process.
Yeah, and I would also just kind of add on to that. I think one of the bigger challenges within customer support teams is being able to prioritize their work. Oftentimes, within customer support, you're fielding a lot of questions. You have a lot of kind of issues you're working through or tickets to work, but you have that huge mass group of those. And so how do you actually take a look at what's more important? Maybe there's some more important customers or more pressing issues that your team should take a look at first. And so those are one of the kind of daily and constant challenges of customer support is within that mass wealth of questions or issues that you might be dealing with, how to prioritize and make sure that you're handling the most important things first.
Yeah, thank you, Stanley. And when we're talking about kind of like building these operations and thinking about processes, thinking about the teams, what do you think are the most important components of good customer support, not only in terms of processes, but in terms of kind of like thinking the operation kind of like end to end?
Yeah, I mean, I think some of the most important components of that good customer support would be, one, having, fast response time. So within customer support, we're always looking at things like, first response time, first resolution time. So just making sure that your customers aren't waiting around over days to get answers to some of their questions or tickets. Two, I think just having really nice visibility into what's actually going on with their ticket. So being able to have those customers be able to track, what's going on. They can see, the current status of their ticket. If there is something that's kind of hung up, they have a way to follow up on those issues. So kind of from an overall visibility standpoint, you want to give that to your customers, as well as kind of internally when you're trying to manage those tickets and emails, having some kind of visibility or way for your managers and teams to be able to see, exactly what's going on, who's assigned to each particular ticket, and where that is in the process. So I think, yeah, overall, just having a way to get those faster response times and providing kind of better communication and visibility on both sides.
Thank you. And is there any other trends besides what we have been discussing in the beginning of the event, Carla, that you have been kind of like spotting with your customers?
I think that now with the global pandemic, what I've seen is that the customers are changing to a more digital they're having a digital transition to their processes. So I think that they're looking to have something like as I mentioned, like more automations, or because they're trying to eliminate all of the manual work that they are doing, and they're trying to have like a touchless technology and have more digital in their processes as well. So that's something that I've seen currently in the customer support environment.
Yeah, and I would also say that a lot of customers are looking more similar to what Carlos said, but looking for more kind of self-service options. So ways to, be able to take a look and figure out issues on their own, or, not necessarily have to call into, a support center or something like that, and maybe having to wait on the line for someone to answer. So having more self-service options. And I think another thing is that, customer support has always been and still remains a chance to have a competitive advantage. So, allowing your team to kind of stand out, make sure that your customers are heard and have their issues resolved quickly. I think that can, create a great impression on your customers and make sure that they continue, working closely with you.
Yeah, that's interesting. I mean, Carla mentioned this acceleration that happened because of COVID. I was wondering, what are the other kind of triggers that you see that are most common for these organizations to get started with kind of like digitizing their processes? Like, what is the tipping point? What makes them, okay, I need to transform this somehow, I need to implement some new processes? Is there a pattern that you see?
Probably because they have received some feedback from the clients, and they said that they can improve their process. And as Stanley mentioned, they want to have a more self-service process where they can, of course, offer a better options or solutions to the clients.
Thank you. We did talk about these customer support, kind of like broader challenges. And Carla, you mentioned having visibility problems and having this problem with a lot of manual work and looking for some automation alternatives. I was wondering, Stanley, maybe you want to take this one. Like, what are the most typical challenges that you see when it comes to the processes, and what is it that teams usually want to solve?
Yeah, so kind of adding on to what I'd mentioned before, I think a lot of the typical process challenges that a customer support team might see is around just kind of overall tracking what is going on within that team. So one, within, if you're intaking these, questions or support issues through email, you don't really have a way to kind of set and measure SLAs. So, you have a bunch of these emails coming in, you have different agents or team members working those issues, but actually having a way to measure, how long those are taking, what's the average ticket time, how often, kind of easy tickets are resolved, harder tickets are resolved, those types of things. And then also just giving visibility to the customer or your managers on what's going on. A lot of times, a customer will submit a request or a ticket, and that kind of goes into a black box, and they don't really know, who's working that ticket, what's the current status. And then also from the manager side, you have this inbox of emails that have come in that need to be worked, but you're not really able to see, those SLAs, who's working what, where the kind of current status of the operation is. And so I think those are some of those key process challenges. And then overall, just having data and a way to do high-level reporting on all of that information. So as a manager, being able to understand, or just as an organization or team, being able to better understand what's actually going on within your team and how your process is flowing.
That's interesting. You mentioned giving the managers more power in terms of data and understanding how the process is working, what are the bottlenecks so that they can optimize it. You mentioned a better experience for the customers who have more visibility over their tickets, and they have this better experience self-serving. What do you think are the biggest upsides for the agents when it comes to optimizing these processes?
I think so. This has been something that I've heard from Capgemini's teams as well. But there's this idea of shadow work. So a lot of these kind of manual tasks that happen behind the scenes, whether they're being done by your customer support teams, or by the customer themselves when they have to kind of dig through your website or go through multiple people to get an answer to their question. There's a lot of these kind of manual or repetitive tasks that are being done that are kind of live in the shadows. So, when you go through some kind of, process transformation or digital transformation, a lot of that shadow work kind of bubbles to the top. And as you actually analyze and take a look at, all the different things that people are actually doing in your process, you'll see there are a lot of those opportunities to eliminate that shadow work. So either to automate it, integrate with other applications, and just, overall kind of streamline it and get rid of all of those kind of unnecessary tasks that your team might be working that can, better be streamlined.
That makes sense. And which leads me to this fifth question, Carla. I would love to hear your take on this. So what do you think? Is there anything that you would add to what Stanley just said when it comes to the agents and the people who are actually working on those tickets? What are the most common challenges that they face, especially when they're using other tools, like they're using a mailbox or kind of like a team shared inbox to handle those? You did mention that there is this visibility problem. Is there anything else that you think that holds these teams back when they're working with these other manual tools?
Yeah, so they don't have, for example, they don't have control on if we think about the share inbox or the generic mailbox, they don't have controls of all of the queries that I receive. As we were just discussing at the beginning, we don't have any prioritization for the emails. So they only have the emails and they don't have the control of who is going to work that email. And then we don't have any categorization on the emails as well, because you cannot create keywords or you cannot categorize the emails and see which one is more important to work on. So I think with the usage of share inbox, we cannot see that. So we don't have controls of all of the emails that are being received, and they are not structured, right? So because we receive all of the emails in Outlook and we don't see what is that we are receiving, if it is only an out of the office reply probably, or if it is an escalation, right? So we don't have that control. We don't have categorization on the request and of course, prioritization on the emails I received.
Thank you. One other thing that I would love to hear from you both is, once you go through this process of digitizing this customer support processes with your customers, what is it that you see that changes the most? Like once you help them automate these processes, what is it that customers report back to you? What is it that they're happier about? What is the biggest change that you see?
I think one of the things that we have seen in common for all of the implementations is that the customer experience improves because they have the response time increases. So I think that's something that is very helpful as well, because as we mentioned before, they know the status of the ticket or the request. They get emails informing of how the request is being handled, or the status of the request. So I think that's one of the things that we've seen. Also, probably the improvement on so that we can have SLAs, and I think that's pretty much like the most important thing that we have seen in regards of the improvements.
Stanley, anything that you want to add? Anything that you see differently?
No, I think, Carla covered them. As a lot of these challenges that we've kind of discussed previously, I think you're able to address a lot of those by automating process. So things like SLAs, automatic triage, removing those manual tasks, and giving that visibility to customers and managers.
Awesome. And just to wrap up this first section with the questions that we wanted to hear from you, I would love to hear, Carla, if you had to sum up. I know that you have kind of like brought a lot of insights already to the discussion, but if you have to choose the 3 top lessons that you learned during these experiences of implementing the solutions with your customers, what would those 3 top lessons would be?
I think the importance of the response time to have the customer satisfaction, right? The customer satisfaction. I think that will be the first one. The second one will be the visibility that we can get, and the third one, the control as well for all of the all of our processes, and because that will help us to identify the bottlenecks and, of course, implement their improvements.
Yeah, and I would just to kind of add on to what Carla said, some of my lessons learned when doing these types of implementations, I think is, one, if you really dive in, there actually is tons of shadow work that your team may be working on that you don't know about. So when you actually decide to go through this kind of process transformation, you open up a lot of those doors and peek behind the curtain to see what is actually happening. And yeah, I think you'll be surprised to find how much opportunity there really is to streamline your process or to integrate with other systems to get rid of those manual tasks. You might, for example, have your agents, copying, pasting something from one system to another. That's something that you can, easily automate and kind of take that off their plate in order for them to be able to actually work on, more high value activities or tasks within your team to help customers. I would say 2, change is hard. I know that's kind of a cliche, but I think especially when you're working with customers, making any type of change may feel risky, even if that end goal is to give them that better experience. So kind of to get around that, I think it's very important to have a comprehensive kind of communication plan, both internally and externally, around the reasons why you're making this change and why you're doing that. So they can understand that end goal is to really to give them a better experience, to answer their questions faster. And so I think just having that in mind. And then 3, I think sometimes it's better to make larger wholesale changes rather than piecemeal changes, especially with something like customer success, where there's typically some kind of status quo type of workflow. Making smaller changes can sometimes feel safer. Whereas I think sometimes if you kind of evaluate the process as a whole, you might see that opportunity to make kind of those larger changes. So, moving from, emails or shared inboxes into something like forms or a customer support kind of portal, which allows, more self-service from the customer, gives them more resources, and helps you, receive those requests in a much more efficient way. I think taking a look at what you can do kind of at that larger scale, I think is an important step in the process as well. So, trying not to just make the easy decisions and the small changes, but taking a look at the entire process as a whole and seeing how you can actually, greatly improve all of those things.
That's really insightful. Thank you both. These were the questions that we had, but now I want to open to the attendees. If you want to also send your questions, you can use the Q&A tool here in Zoom, and then I can move those questions to them. Let me see if we have something here. So Stanley, this relates to what you were just saying to your lesson number 2. The question is, if you usually see a lot of resistance from these customer support teams when implementing these changes, and what managers usually do to deal with that?
Yeah, I think whenever you're making changes, there is resistance because people kind of get set in their ways of doing things, that they know how to do what they were doing previously, and so making any of those changes, you usually face at least some kind of resistance. I think, one of the important things to try to ease those concerns when you're making those changes is to just make sure that you have a lot of training in place. So making sure that they understand exactly, why you're making those changes, how they can actually shift from their previous process into their new process without any interruptions or issues, and then giving them time to also get confident in that new process. So having additional sessions where they can work within the new system to try it out and see, kind of pick out the if there are still any inefficiencies in that process. But yeah, really just making sure that they get comfortable and confident in using that new process, and being able to answer any questions they have on doing that.
Mm-hmm. Thank you, Stanley. We have another question here. If you, I don't know, maybe both of you can jump in, but one thing that has been asked here is, when it comes to kind of like getting leadership buy-in to begin this transformation and begin this type of implementation, what kind of advice would you give to someone trying to get leadership buy-in to start that process?
I think something that we need to take in consideration is to have a proper formulation of the strategy that we need to follow. We need to discuss also and understand how how their process is doing, so we can identify and have a good implementation of the tool, right? So I think the communication between the client and is very important to understand the pain points and also to offer the best solution that fits their process.
Yeah, I think another thing kind of tied along with that is, making these changes is hard. And, I think if you're able to bring examples of how other customers have done it before, or other similar organizations have done it before, I think that helps ease a lot of those concerns too. Just understanding that, they're not the first to take a risky step, but, others have done it as well and have gotten great results from it. And so it shouldn't be that hard of a decision to make those changes as well.
Mm-hmm. And last question, we have time for one more. How long does it usually take for you to implement those automated processes in your clients? That's a tricky one, right? I figured that it takes different amounts of time.
Yeah, it depends on the process, but it is a very, since it is a very user-friendly and we don't require a lot of integration with IT, for example, but usually between 6 to 8 weeks, we could say.
No, that's fast. Thank you, Carla. Just wrapping it up here, we're almost at the end. I would just wanted to go over here a very, very quick intro to what PipeFi does. So PipeFi is the no-code process orchestration platform that Carla and Stanley help customers implement, right, to automate and improve those customer support processes. ProFS is actually a very flexible tool, so you can basically create whatever workflows you need to get your tickets, get your requests, get whatever types of approval escalation that you need, and complete those. So you don't need any coding skills to do that. You can just set up all of your automation rules, your business rules, whatever conditions that you want to apply to your workflow and get going. Those processes can include customer support, customer onboarding, and a lot of other ones. If you are interested in understanding a little bit more how Pipefy works for customer support specifically, we'll have a demo day next week. You can just scan this QR code or use the link below to register, and we'll be very, very happy to have you there. I want to thank Stanley and Carla for giving their time and sharing their expertise here. This has been super insightful. Thank you very, very much. And thank you everyone that joined as well. Hopefully this was helpful to you as well.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Thanks for having me.